Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
I don't have a lot of investments, but I have a couple. And every time I would speak to my, I guess you call it, investment advisor, and I tell them that I don't want to invest in the stock market, they'd get this arrogant laugh like, well, you don't want to invest in the stock market? What's wrong with you? Don't you know you're going to make X number of dollars over the course of the several years? Well, I knew things like this. We have the headline, while media peddled delusion, Infowars predicted great crash of 2015. Even as late as last week, news outlets like CNBC were urging viewers to invest in the stock market, ludicrously suggesting that the market was simply having a dull year and that this would be good for investors. Well, we've had numerous people on the show like Gerald Celente and Harry Dent and Dr. Ron Paul and Peter Schiff, who all told us that this day was going to come. Some people said it could come as late as October this year, but they all said pretty much in this late summer, early fall timeframe. And now we have the article, Black Friday, stock markets collapse amid global sell-off. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 1,000 points on Monday amid a huge decline in Chinese stocks and a global sell-off. And we have all those people and so many more who are going to break this down for you and prove that we and our guests predicted this a long time coming.
They're flooding into Greece. They're flooding into Italy. Afghanistan, you mentioned Greece, flooding into Greece. You look at what's going on in Egypt. You look what's going on in Iraq. You look what's going on in Somalia, Sudan. It's chaos. The global economy has collapsed. Commodity prices are down to 2002 levels. We were in a recession in 2002.
And Gerald, I looked it up. Since they created the National Grain Reserves in World War II, it's never been empty. The government has exhausted the grain. I mean, they've never done that.
And you look at coal, look at, as I said, commodity prices, corn. From corn to coal to copper to iron ore. Everything has collapsed. China's not buying this stuff. Look at the data. Look what just came out today.
Stay there, stay there. Gerald Celente, trends forecaster, joins us. How close are we to the big event?
Well, you know, they give us the numbers, they fudge them, but the Wall Streeters still believe it. But I think they're getting more reluctant. That market is pretty shaky. But the other day when they gave us the GDP number, they said it was, what, 0.2 increase. But if you looked at the inventory increase, they use that as a positive. Oh, they're building up. People are going to buy. But sometimes the inventory builds up because nobody's buying. And if you remove that, which I think is artificial, you have, and I think you mentioned, a negative growth. It was probably down a couple %. And there's a limit to how much bad news can be twisted into being good news. And I think they're running out of steam. I think the Fed has printed so much for so long. And this is why I'm predicting that and you've heard me talk about it for years, the vulnerability of the dollar. And we've had a free ride for a long time. They have the reserve currency of the world, and people have been more or less forced to it. But there are countries now thinking about alternatives, and there's other countries that are buying the gold. So I think even technically speaking right now, the dollar is looking like it may have already started down. You know, it was up like 35% in the last year or two, and now it's turning around and starting down. I think we're still seeing the beginning of the falling dollar. The big question is people only look at the other currencies, say, oh, the dollar's fallen. Does that mean we have to buy euros or something else? No, it's all a mess. And when the dollar crash comes, people won't trust any of the currencies. They'll go to real money. They will buy gold and silver. They're going to latch on to anything that's real. And even real estate and other things like this will serve as a preservation of wealth, and it won't be in holding dollars.
Unfortunately, I don't see how you could economically be incorrect about what you're saying, and even mainline analysts admit that no bubble's ever gone this far. Is the day of judgment for the Federal Reserve and other private central banks coming?
Yeah, I think for the not to come would be a surprise to me. And you've been involved in this a long time. I mean, it wasn't like you didn't know what was happening with the housing bubble. And we had the NASDAQ bubble. And now we have other bubbles. We still have another stock market bubble, and there's another housing bubble going on. But the big bubble, I think, is in the bond bubble. It's been going on for 35 years, taking interest rates from 21% down to actually negative. And they've been getting away with it. So this means distortion. Not only is there money involved, but it distorted all the investment over these periods of time. And the biggest distortion that it encourages debt. It encourages debt for a lot of people, but in particular government. And as long as our government is able to print the reserve currency, it's going to limp along, even though our economy is limping along. But that will come to an end. And right now we're starting to see the whole thing coming apart. I mean, we look at Detroit as an example. We see what's happening in Greece. They're worrying about what's going to happen, after Greece is recognized as actually totally bankrupt. There'll be other countries. This distortion has been going on for so long. Most people think that when governments print money, that the only thing that happens is that prices go up as a consequence of inflation. And a lot of that is true, and it's a serious problem and destroys the middle class and the poor. But to me, the bigger distortion is the lack of pricing for money and causing people to do dumb things. And that's why they overbuild and overinvest and governments overspend. And then you have the Keynesians still in charge that says that the solution for this is just to spend more money and print more money, and that's coming to an end. The day of reckoning is at hand.
Where do you see all this going? What's your take on the China situation? A lot of predictions by smart people that this winter is going to be hellish on markets, bond markets, you name it. I mean, give us your analysis of that.
Well, most people are optimistic, I think, on the market, certainly the U.S. market. I don't share that. I don't think the market's going to collapse, though, because I don't think the Federal Reserve will allow it to collapse. I don't believe that the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates like everybody thinks. In fact, if you look at the testimony of Janet Yellen this week, she testified up on Capitol Hill. All the headlines were about how she's about to raise rates, how she reaffirms that the Fed's going to raise rates this year. That helped the dollar. That sent gold to a new low for the year. But if you actually look at what she said, she didn't say she was going to raise rates. All she said was that if the economy evolves the way they expect, which is a big if, because it never evolves the way they expect.
They've been saying that for 2 years. If it gets better, they're going to raise them.
Yeah, but they didn't even say they're going to raise them. All she said is if the economy evolves as they expect, it may be appropriate to raise rates. Not that it will be appropriate, but that it might be. And even if it is appropriate to raise them, that doesn't mean the Fed will raise them. I mean, the Fed could say, well, it's appropriate, but we're not going to do it because we don't want to. I mean, it's been appropriate to raise rates for years, and they haven't done it. In fact, it wasn't appropriate to lower them to zero. This is not about propriety. This is about expedience. And I think the Fed will keep interest rates at zero regardless of what's appropriate. The cheap money, quantitative easing, 0% interest rates, it was the Fed's manipulation of money supply and interest rates that inflated the bubbles. You know, sure, they had help from Congress, but I think the chief enabler is the Federal Reserve, and they've done a lot of damage. And I think when people come to terms with this reality, it's going to be a huge game changer. I think the bottom is going to drop out of the dollar in a very big way. I think you're going to see a spectacular reversal in gold prices, silver prices, commodity prices, when people realize that, you know, we are just going to print and print and print. The Fed is just getting started. The helicopters are still in the hangars. They're getting warmed up. This is going to be more money printing. And this is not going to end well. This is not the happy picture, the smiley face that Janet Yellen is putting on this, or all the Wall Street economists. And there's not a lot of time. You know, people have been riding this bubble on the dollar. The U.S. stock market made new highs. People need to act now. You know, people need to open up accounts, you know, with me at Euro Pacific's Capital so that they can get their money out of U.S. assets, get out of Dodge before the bullets start flying. You got to get into foreign stocks and the right stocks. I mean, there are certain countries, Switzerland, Singapore, New Zealand, I mean, Hong Kong, there are places that you should invest to escape the carnage. And you got to get out of U.S. currency. You got to pick the best foreign currencies. You got to own real money. You got to own gold and silver. You got to look at the opportunity in the mining shares that have been beaten down because people have no idea what's going on. The people who have been selling gold stocks, these are the same guys buying the subprime mortgages.
Well, the elites are hoarding.
And we'll end our segment tonight with this before we go on to more special reports in our later segments. Jack Lew, the Treasury Secretary, was being grilled about his communications with one Hillary Clinton. Now, a lot of people are saying that the Hillary email scandal isn't the big scandal it's hyped up to be. And personally, I think the Benghazi thing is a much bigger deal, but they want to focus on this for whatever reason. And now people are being questioned about her involvement in these servers that aren't exactly the most secure. And now we see Representative Sean Duffy coming after Mr. Jack Lew, so we'll go out to break with this and come back with more special reports.
I mean, President Obama has indicated this is going to be one of the most open and transparent governments we've ever seen. And as one of his representatives, I would ask that you actually respond to the question, which is, did you ever notice that you were corresponding with Secretary Clinton on an account that was not a .gov account?
Congressman, I always...
Did you ever notice that, yes or no?
I always made sure I was corresponding with the right person.
That's not my... Listen, you're very good at this, not answering questions, and I appreciate the way you tap dance, but I think everyone in the room understands my question, and you're just not answering it. Did you know that you were corresponding with Secretary Clinton on an account that was not a .gov account? Yes or no?
Congressman, I don't remember giving it a lot of thought at the time.
That's not whether you gave it a lot of thought or not is not my question. The question is, did you know you were corresponding with her on an email that was
It's a long time ago.
So you're saying you don't remember? Is that your testimony?
I'm just telling you.
Is it your testimony that you don't remember?
I'm just telling you that when I emailed with people, I always make sure.
So is it fair to say you don't want to answer my question, Mr. Secretary? Because you know the question I'm asking, and you're refusing to answer it. So I guess what I'm assuming is you knew you were corresponding with her on an account that was a non-official account. And I understand you don't want to lie to Congress, and I appreciate that, and you don't want to be part of a news story. I appreciate that, so you don't want to answer my question. But I think all of us here understand that you're saying, I knew that it was a non-official account. I just don't want to tell you.
Brain Force is here. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on this the last few months. You probably noticed I've been more crazed, more focused, less brain fog, more energy, more special reports, and it's because of Brain Force.
We kept changing this formula over and over and over again until it became sort of a grand puzzle. For example, the L-theanine inside of it, that is activated by the different compounds in the yerba mate that we put inside of it as well. This just increases the compounds you already have.
This is what you're actually designed to run on.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a car will run on one form of junkie gas, but it runs really good on what it's designed for.
And that's the principle of Infowars Life, as far as I understand, that you've always had, is that it's not about synthetic chemicals and forcing actions. It's about letting your body do its own thing and giving your body the tools it needs to create these different compounds that are super valuable and super beneficial.
You will find Brain Force and other game-changing products at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.